Hey everyone, it's let's see, May 25th, and we're finally getting back to work on the H here. Today we're going to work on tearing the motor apart, and the engine. Motors are electric. We're going to tear the engine down and inspect everything, and yeah, see what we got to work with. I'm hoping that a lot of it is showing little signs of wear, so the engine didn't smoke at all when we were running it in the tractor, so that's a good thing. Good sign that we got minimal wear, but again, I don't know if this thing's ever been opened up, so it might be original. I got to give a few shout outs real quick. I did shout out last time in my last video to Apache Heaven Farms for the sticker that they provided that I wasn't able to stick on my toolbox all winter because it's been so cold, but just to show you guys, it is on the toolbox. Really cool sticker. Looks like it's got a Farmall H on there, or an M. So fits right in my shop, so thanks again for that. I got to give a big shout out to Tony P. He sent me a small engine service manual, and it covers a very wide variety of engines, everything from Briggs & Stratton to Chrysler and Jacobsen and Homelight, even some of the more rare engines. Cox, I didn't even know they made an engine, but they did. So some of the I think the smaller marine engines are covered in that as well, so I'm sure that'll come in handy when I need to fix, whether it's the snowblower with the Briggs & Stratton, or I got a push mower that's a lawn boy. That should be covered in that manual. My chainsaws, I got a gas powered leaf blower. So I got a ton of stuff that I could use that manual for. So thanks again, Tony. And last but not least, hold on one second here. Okay, sorry about that. Last shout out goes to Brian H. I had to take care of something quick, but Brian H sent, him and his brothers sent a, believe it or not, complete cylinder head that's been machined, is ready to go. It's only got about 2 to 3 hours of run time on it, and the reason they removed it from the tractor was because they were using the tractor for pulling, and they decided to use a different head with a lot more compression. So huge thanks to Brian H and his brother for sending that, and they even sent new studs for the exhaust manifold with nuts and washers. So that's going to save us a ton of money when it comes to the rebuild on this. It's going to save a lot of machine work cost. Hopefully the bottom end of the motor is okay. I'm hoping we don't have to send the crank out or anything to be turned, but we'll find out when we get it opened up. So a couple more updates before we get started. I had to order new front tires for the M because I blew out one of the other ones this last winter. So these are 650-16s with tubes. I got those off the internet. I think I got them off Amazon actually. And Jeremy, as you guys know, sent me these 6.0s. I think they're 6, or maybe they're 550-16s. I think they're 550s. I can't remember. Let's see here. Yep, 550-16s. He sent me those for the H project, but because Titan Tire is so gracefully willing to donate the tires for this project, Jeremy said go ahead and use them on another one of your tractors. So huge shout out again to Jeremy. Last but not least, I did fill up the cylinders on the John Deere D with acetone and ATF to try to get the pistons, you know, a little bit, try to do a little bit of work while not working on it, so to speak. So try to get the pistons freed up a little bit. I did notice that there is a crack in the block, but the good news is I've got a friend that's got an early D cylinder block, so I'll be picking that up from him at some point. So that's about all I've got for shout outs and updates. I mean, shout out to everybody for continuing to watch and support, so thank you to everybody. But we're gonna go ahead and get started on this, and first thing we're gonna do, pull the rocker assembly off, pull the push rods off, and then probably separate the thermostat housing from the water pump and the head, and from there we'll start working on getting the head off so we can have a look inside. So stay tuned. Okay, so first thing we got to do is remove the oil line. Now the purpose of this line is to drip oil on all these rockers and lubricate both the rocker arms and the valves. So it's just a 1/2 inch wrench. Okay, oil line's off. Put that in the valve cover. Now, pull the rockers off. We'll leave that one in. Okay. And this oil line, let me see here, this is different than the M was. So, or not, let's see here. I'm thinking I might have to loosen these two nuts here. Let me grab the correct size. It looks like probably 7/16 or 3/8. I'll be right back with you. Okay. It took a little bit of tapping. I didn't have to pull these out. These two, actually they're studs, I think, with nuts on them, but I didn't have to pull those out. So take them off as an assembly. Kind of inspect all the bottoms of the tappets. They look pretty good. There's a little bit of wear on them, but it's not too bad. Pull all the push rods. Now some people get upset about the push rods having to go exactly back in the same exact hole that they came from, and that's not the case because you're going to have to adjust them anyways. So even if you want to make the argument that they've got a wear pattern already in them, well, yeah, that's great, but they're going to wear in again anyways, so what's the difference? That's how I look at it. All right, so the rockers are off, the oil line's off, the push rods are out. Now we have to get both the thermostat housing assembly and then disconnect the vent tube that goes to the governor housing in order to get the head off. So let's go ahead and keep moving with that. It looks like I need probably a 9/16 and then a flat screwdriver or standard. There it is, thermostat housing. So the thermostat is actually between these two halves. So you take out this bolt here, and these halves separate, and there's a thermostat in here. So, or there should be. Yep, it's in there. There's that. Get this old radiator or this old coolant passage hose off. Okay, now we gotta remove the vent tube. And a lot of times these vent tubes, if you guys have some issues with your tractor not running properly, sometimes these vent tubes get clogged up, so you gotta clean them out. Wrenches, what do we need? Probably 5/8 maybe? Right there on the bench already. Okay, we've got our governor vent tube off, thermostat housings off, spark plugs are out. I still had champions in this, and I usually don't prefer champions, but what I generally do is break all these loose, starting from the center and working my way out, kind of in a crisscross pattern. That way I'm not compromising the integrity of the head. I think we already got that one. There we go. Oops, sorry. Sorry about that. One disadvantage of the chest strap. All right, so they're all loose. Now we just got to take them all off. Okay, we've got all of our cylinder head nuts off. Now we just got to lift it straight up and off. And this is the tough part, so I'm going to take the camera off my chest and get a different angle. Judging by the look of everything, number 3 has a pretty, I don't want to say heavy ridge, but it's pretty pronounced. It definitely catches your fingernail. Number 2 is all right. Number 1, it's got a little ridge on the front side. And number 4, yeah, I don't know, maybe these will clean up with a hone, but there's a pretty pronounced ridge in number 3, so we might be looking at doing some sleeves and pistons in this. Dang it. I was hoping we wouldn't have to pull the sleeves, but we'll hone them out and see what they measure out at, see if they're within spec, and go from there. But let's keep going on this. Got to remove the magneto drive housing. We'll take the side access plate off. We can get all the lifters out of there, and we can also remove the water jacket plate, inspect that, see what that looks like in there, see how much crud is inside the water jackets, and then go from there. So the tough part about pulling the bottom end apart will be this pin, this crankshaft pin. It looks like it's got an Allen or a hex drive set screw for this pin, so hopefully that's the case. My M had just a slotted screw, and that was a pain in the butt to remove, but we're getting there. Let's get the water pump assembly off, the magneto drive housing, and then the inspection covers, and we'll go from there. Timing mark is right here. You can see that dot right there next to my thumb. Quite a bit of movement side to side in this shaft. Might have to... It moves freely, but we might have to look at the bushing that's inside this housing. I believe there's a bushing that this rides in, so we might have to look at that. Okay, I'm going to show you guys a quick trick here. If you have a regular flat or standard screw that's really difficult to turn by hand, what I do is I take a wrench that fits the shaft of the screwdriver and I put pressure on it with my hand, but then I turn it with the other hand to break that screw loose. That way your screwdriver isn't jumping out of that screw and causing damage to it. Just a little tip. But what I'm taking out now, this bar or this strap steel, is essentially to keep the lifters in place so that if you tip the motor over, they don't fall out when you're trying to assemble it. So that's the reason that they have this piece of strap steel in there. And then most of the time, when I take bolts out of a specific piece, I put the bolts back into it so that I know where they go. Or I take Ziploc bags and I put them in the Ziploc bags and mark the bags. So that's another cheap and easy way to ensure that you're getting everything together properly and you don't lose anything. That and these magnetic trays. So go ahead and remove the lifters. Now people generally are pretty picky about putting these back in the exact same holes. I'm not, because once again everything's going to be adjusted, and yeah, they may have some type of a wear mark on the face where they ride on the cam lobes, but you can polish those wear marks out with a nice flat piece of what I like to use is an old glass cutting board with a piece of sandpaper on it, because those are a nice flat surface. So then you can just polish them and put them back in. This one, a little stubborn. These end ones are kind of difficult to get to, but there they are, all our lifters. It's not too bad in there. little bit of crud, but it's not too bad. So, when you don't drain your block, this is your block drain here. There is at least this much coolant still in the block. So if you're running straight water and you don't drain the block in the wintertime, you're going to have freezing issues and you're going to get a cracked block in this area and possibly on the other side. So keep that in mind for some of you guys that live in a little bit warmer climates, or even if you don't and you just run straight water in your tractor in the summer and drain it, don't forget to drain your block because there's still a lot of coolant in here. So I haven't drained mine yet, but I will. So let's figure out where we're going to go from here. I think we might drain this and then tip the block over and take the oil pan off and push the pistons out. So stay tuned. Okay, I removed the set screw for the crankshaft hand crank pin, and then I drove the pin out. They had a bolt in there for a pin. It worked, but we'll replace it with a roll pin when we reinstall everything. So we're ready to remove the flywheel, or not the flywheel, the crankshaft pulley nut. But first I'm going to take off the oil pan so that we can look into the bottom of the engine. Alright, now in order to remove the connecting rod caps, there's these safety washers that get bent up around these connecting rod bolts. So you got to bend those away. Try to be careful because you don't want to drop one in here if you break it and then have to try and search for it in one of these orifices. But I've got all those bent back, so let's go ahead and loosen our connecting rod bolts and push the pistons out. Ooh, the crank looks really good. We got a lot of bearing left in these caps. No major scoring. That's good. So far, so good. It's got aluminum pit, but you can see how worn the rings are from going back and forth. The top ring especially. No major scoring in the pistons. Piston looks okay. This bearing surface looks good and the crankshaft feels good. So far, we're looking good as far as the crankshaft goes. We'll know for sure when we measure it, but I got to change my gloves here. I'm starting to get the camera really greasy and I don't want to do that. So let's try to figure out where to go next. I'm pretty sure we should pull the crankshaft pulley, front timing cover, governor assembly, and then from there it's pretty much remove the main seal carrier, which is back here, and then it's just the main caps for the main journals, and we can lift the crankshaft out, slide the camshaft out, and it'll pretty much be a bare block except for the sleeves and the camshaft bearings. So let me clean up and we'll keep going. Okay, in order to remove the governor assembly, there's one bolt on the top side or the bottom side, and then one coming from the opposite side on the top. Couple light taps, and it should come right out. Wow, look at all that dirt behind there. Whoo-wee. I've also got all the bolts out of the front of the timing cover. There's a few on the front side here. So we should be able to give that a couple light taps and get it to come loose. Should be able to. Timing cover's off. So I'm kind of laying everything out on this piece of plywood. Oop. And do not lose this. This is an oil slinger, so I got to remove the keyway or the Woodruff key on the crankshaft in order to get it off, though. Let me grab some pliers. There we go. So we'll put those in a safe place, right on the workbench. Now, this is just an idler gear, so it's kind of your intermediate gear between the crankshaft and the, let's see, the governor. And then the camshaft is here, and that drives your magneto drive. So what we can do is remove the idler gear, and then we can probably rotate the engine so we can get to the bolts for this front plate, and then the plate should come off. We should be able to get to the bolts that hold the camshaft bearing in. We'll pull the camshaft off as a unit, and then it's just the crankshaft and rear main seal. So let me pull this intermediate gear off. It just looks like a 5/8 probably. We'll pull that off, and we'll work on getting the front plate and camshaft out. Okay, in order to get the camshaft out, what you have to do is turn the engine, and you can get to the bolts that hold the bearing retainer for the camshaft through the camshaft gear. So you get to the top or the bottom one here, rotate the engine over, you can get to the other one on the bottom side through this hole. So once you do that, the cam will slide out as a unit. Be careful when you're sliding it out here, so you don't bang it around and damage it. And there it is. Camshaft's out. And it looks really good. No significant wear marks or pitting that I can see. The gear looks good. Let's put this, try to stand it up here. I don't like to lay shafts down because I don't want them to bend or get stepped on or anything like that. So I like to stand them up on end. But now we just have to remove, I've already removed one bolt, remove this bolt, and the timing plate will come off, or the front engine plate. There we go. Front engine plate. We'll put that right on top of the timing cover. Now it's the main bearing caps, and the rearmost main bearing cap is underneath the rear main seal carrier, so we have to remove that. There's a series of bolts all the way around in order to get that off. It's two halves, so I'm going to take this plate off here, and then I'll get to the bolts on the back side, which are going to be the difficult part because of the engine stand. But with a wrench we should be able to get to them. Then we'll remove the main bearing caps and lift out the crankshaft. So hang on while I get out the tools to get this main bearing seal, or rear main seal, off. Okay, here's our rear main seal carrier, and then this bracket bolts to the underside of it to give the oil pan something to bolt to and seal to. So it isn't easy, but you can get to all these bolts in the back side in order to get it off and separate it from around the crankshaft. So I just got to remove this final safety wire, and then we'll pull the main bearing caps and lift the crankshaft out. Alright, well, we've got everything tore apart. The only thing I haven't done yet is taking these main bearing inserts out of the journals. So everything looks really good. I mean, it's dirty, really dirty, but everything looks really good. Definitely needs to be scraped and pressure washed and soaked with oven cleaner. But everything looks good, so that's good. A lot of sludge in the bottom of the oil pan here, probably at least a good ½ inch. You can even see the screen for the oil filter, or the oil pump pickup, has got a bunch of sludge in the bottom of it too. So from here, it's just a matter of cleaning everything up, inspecting it, and seeing what we have to replace. And I'm kind of leaning on the fact that we're probably going to have to put sleeves in it, because a couple of them have pretty good ridges in them already. But we'll hone them. We'll see where we're at, because sometimes you can get away with a little bit of honing and new rings. But we'll see what happens. I've got to clean up here, and then the next video we'll do some cleaning and inspecting of the parts. So we're making progress. Thanks for sticking around. Thanks for watching. Thanks for wrenching with me. Thanks for supporting, and we'll see you next time.